I found the envelope in my mailbox on a Tuesday, addressed to me in handwriting I'd recognize anywhere because it was mine. The return address was a hospital I'd never been to. St. Catherine's Medical Center, Building C, Ward 7. I opened it standing right there in the lobby of my apartment building, and that's when I saw the discharge summary. Patient name, my name, date of admission, 3 days ago. Date of discharge, yesterday. Attending physician signature at the bottom, in blue ink, unmistakably my own handwriting, except I'm not a doctor. I've never worked in healthcare, and I definitely wasn't in any hospital last week. I teach high school English. That's what I do. That's what I've always done. But I knew that signature, the way the capital letters looped, the specific slant of my cursive. I'd signed enough permission slips and grade reports to recognize my own hand. The document even had my physician license number printed beneath it, a string of digits I'd never seen before but somehow felt familiar, like a phone number you can't quite place. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, just staring at it. Chen came through with her groceries, said hello, asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine, just some junk mail. She smiled and headed upstairs. The whole time I kept thinking, this has to be a mistake. Some administrative error. Someone with my name. Similar handwriting. Wrong address on file. But the document listed my exact birth date, my social security number, my current address. And at the bottom, in the section marked Discharge Instructions, there was a blank line. Patient signature required to acknowledge receipt of post-care protocols. I didn't sign it. Not then. I took it upstairs to my apartment, spread it out on my kitchen table under the good light. The paper was standard medical stock, slightly textured, with the hospital letterhead embossed at the top. Everything looked official. The diagnosis codes were printed in that small, precise font hospitals use. The primary diagnosis was listed as dissociative fugue state with temporal displacement features. I had to look that up. The secondary diagnosis was even stranger. Autoscopic phenomenon, recurrent, with identity confusion. I didn't have epilepsy. I'd never had a migraine in my life. And I sure as hell hadn't been in any fugue state. I'd been teaching. I checked my phone calendar. Last Tuesday through Thursday, I'd taught 4 classes each day. I had the lesson plans. I remembered the kids, the discussions about the yellow wallpaper, the quiz I'd given on Thursday. But the discharge summary said I'd been admitted on Tuesday at 9:47 a.m. and discharged Thursday at 4:15 p.m. I called the hospital, got transferred 3 times before reaching medical records. The woman who answered sounded tired, like she'd been doing this job for 20 years and had stopped being surprised by anything. I received a discharge summary, I said, but I was never a patient there. Name and date of birth? I gave them to her. Heard typing. Yes, I have your file here. Admitted Tuesday, discharged Thursday. Is there a problem with the documentation? I wasn't there. I was at work. I'm a teacher. More typing. A pause. The admission was voluntary. You came in through the emergency department. The attending physician was... She paused again. Dr. Sarah Chen, is that... Are you Dr. Chen? That's my name, Sarah Chen. But I'm not a doctor. No, I said. I'm a teacher. There's been a mistake. The signature on file matches our records. You're listed as both the patient and the attending physician on this case. I felt something cold spread across my back. That's impossible. I'm just reading what's in the system, ma'am. If you believe there's been an error, you'll need to come in and speak with our patient relations department. They're open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It was Tuesday evening, almost 6. I said I'd come in tomorrow. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept getting up to look at the discharge summary, reading it over and over. The clinical, I graduated from State College in 2010 with a degree in English literature. I got my teaching certificate in 2012. I'd never been to Johns Hopkins. I'd never studied medicine. But when I read at 3 a.m., I did something I probably shouldn't have. I tried to forge my signature to see if I could replicate the one on the document. I got out a piece of paper and a blue pen, the same kind used on the discharge summary. I wrote Dr. Sarah Chen in my normal handwriting. It matched perfectly, not similar, not close, perfect. The exact same loops and slants and pressure points, like I'd been signing that name with that title for years. I threw the pen across the room. The next morning, I called in sick to work. First time in 3 years. I drove to St. Catherine's Medical Center, which turned out to be about 40 minutes outside the city, in a part of town I'd never had reason to visit. The building was newer than I expected, all glass and steel, with those modern architectural features that are supposed to look welcoming, but somehow feel sterile. Building C was around the back, connected to the main hospital by a covered walkway. The directory in the lobby listed Ward 7 as Psychiatric Services Inpatient. My hands were shaking when I pressed the elevator button. The 7th floor was quiet. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, that particular smell hospitals have. Antiseptic mixed with something else, something organic underneath. The nurse's station was directly across from the elevator. A young guy in scrubs looked up when I approached. "I'm here to see patient relations," I said, "about a discharge summary error." He glanced at his computer screen. "Name? Sarah Chen." His expression changed slightly. "Not much, just a flicker of recognition." "Doctor, we weren't expecting you today. Are you here for rounds?" "I'm not Doctor. That's my name, but I'm not a doctor." He stared at me for a moment, then picked up the phone, spoke quietly to someone, hung up. "Someone will be right with you. You can wait in the consultation room. Room 712, just down the hall on the left." I walked down the corridor, passing patient rooms with closed doors. Some had names on them, little plastic slots with paper inserts. One of them said, Chen S. I stopped. The door was slightly ajar. I could see inside, a standard hospital room, bed made, no personal items visible. But on the wall, there was a whiteboard with today's date written at the top and below it, attending Dr. Chen. I pushed the door open wider. The room wasn't empty. There were papers scattered across the bed, dozens of them, all discharge summaries, all with my name as the patient, all with my signature as the attending physician. But the dates were different, some from last week, some from months ago, one from 2019. I picked up the nearest one. The diagnosis was the same: dissociative fugue, autoscopic phenomenon. But the clinical, another one, dated 6 months ago. Patient demonstrated brief moment of clarity, acknowledged position as attending psychiatrist, then immediately reverted to teacher delusion. Identity integration remains unsuccessful. My vision started to blur at the edges. You weren't supposed to come during the day. I turned. A woman stood in the doorway, maybe 50, wearing a white coat with a hospital ID badge. Her name tag read, Dr. Patricia Morrison, Chief of Psychiatry. I don't understand what's happening, I said. I know. She stepped into the room, closed the door behind her. You never do during the day. That's part of the condition. What condition? I'm not sick, I'm a teacher. She picked up one of the discharge summaries from the bed, scanned it. You're a psychiatrist, doctor. You've worked here for 6 years. You specialize in dissociative disorders. She paused. You're also a patient here. Have been for the last 18 months. That's insane. Yes, she said quietly. It is. You were diagnosed with a severe dissociative identity disorder following a traumatic incident. You've developed what we call a protective identity, the teacher persona. During the day, you genuinely believe you're Sarah Chen, the English teacher. You have complete memories of that life, that career. But at night, you revert. You come here, you do rounds, you see patients, you write discharge summaries for yourself, trying to release yourself from care. I backed away from her. No. I have students. I have lesson plans. I taught class yesterday. You have delusions of students. You have delusions of lesson plans. Her voice was gentle, almost sad. The mind is remarkably creative when it's protecting itself from trauma. You've constructed an entire alternative life, complete with consistent memories and daily routines. But none of it exists outside your mind. Prove it. Call my school. She pulled out her phone, pulled up a contact, put it on speaker. It rang twice before someone answered. Lincoln High School? How may I direct your call? My school. I felt a surge of relief. Yes, I'm calling to verify employment for Sarah Chen, English department, Dr. Morrison said. One moment. Typing sounds. Then, I'm sorry, we don't have anyone by that name on staff. We have a Susan Chen in the math department. No, Sarah Chen, English. She's been teaching there for over 10 years. I've been here 15 years, ma'am. I know all our English teachers. We've never had a Sarah Chen. Dr. Morrison ended the call, looked at me. I couldn't breathe properly. The room felt too small. The traumatic incident, I managed to say. What was it? You don't remember? I don't remember any of this. She hesitated. You had a patient, a young woman, severe dissociative identity disorder. You'd been treating her for 2 years. She was making progress, integrating her alters, and then one day during a session, Dr. Morrison stopped, choosing her words carefully. She became violent. She believed you were one of her persecutory alters, that you were trying to erase her. She attacked you. You survived? Physically. But the psychological trauma was severe. You developed your own dissociative condition as a response. The teacher identity emerged as a way to escape the reality of what happened, to imagine a life where you'd never been a psychiatrist, never treated that patient, never experienced that violence. I looked down at the discharge summaries scattered on the bed, picked up another one, this time really looking at the handwriting. It was mine, but there were subtle variations. Some were written more carefully, with precise medical terminology. Others were rushed, almost frantic, the letters slanting more sharply. How many times have I done this? I asked. Come here, found these papers? This is the 43rd cycle we've documented. Usually you come at night when your doctor identity is dominant. You review your own case file, write a discharge summary, sign it. Then, during the day, the teacher identity receives it in the mail. We have someone on staff who delivers them to your apartment, which is actually a supervised living facility connected to this hospital. You discover the papers, become distressed, come here to investigate, we explain the situation, and then what? And then you sign the discharge summary. The moment you do, the cycle resets. You forget this conversation. You go back to your apartment. Tomorrow you'll wake up believing you're a teacher again. Eventually at night, you'll come back here as Dr. Chen and write another discharge summary for yourself. I looked at the blank signature line at the bottom of the summary I was holding. Patient acknowledgement of discharge instructions. What happens if I don't sign? Dr. Morrison's expression shifted, something almost like hope crossing her face. We don't know. You've always signed. We think it's part of the compulsion, the need to complete the paperwork, to make it official. If you could resist that urge, if you could break the pattern, I might integrate. The two identities might merge. Or one might dominate permanently, or you might fragment further. We don't know. I set the paper down on the bed. My hands were steadier now, even though my mind was racing. The patient who attacked me, what happened to her? Dr. Morrison looked away. She's still here. Ward 7, room 723. She never integrated. She's been in a persistent dissociative state for 18 months. The same amount of time I'd supposedly been here. I want to see her. That's not advisable. I want to see her. Dr. Morrison studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Follow me. We walked down the corridor, past more closed doors, more names I didn't recognize. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, that particular frequency that seems designed to make you feel slightly nauseous. We stopped at room 723. Through the small window in the door, I could see a woman sitting on the bed. She was younger than me, maybe late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was writing something, her hand moving rapidly across a sheet of paper. She writes constantly, Dr. Morrison said. Discharge summaries mostly, for herself, for other patients, for staff members. She's trying to release everyone from the hospital. She believes if she can just get the paperwork right, if she can just sign the correct forms, everyone can leave. I watched the woman write. Something about her posture, the way she held the pen, felt familiar. What's her name? Sarah Chen. The cold feeling in my back spread to my arms, my legs. That's not possible. She's you, Dr. Morrison said. Or rather, you're her. The dissociation went deeper than we initially understood. You didn't just develop a protective identity, you developed a protective other. A patient who needed your help, who you could treat, who you could save, because you couldn't save yourself. I looked through the window again. The woman, me, was still writing, completely absorbed in her task. So which one is real? The teacher, the doctor, or the patient? All of them, none of them. That's the nature of severe dissociative disorders. The identities feel completely real to the person experiencing them. The memories, the skills, the entire sense of self. It's all genuine, even if it's constructed. The traumatic incident, I said slowly. The patient who attacked me, that was me too, wasn't it? Dr. Morrison didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was barely above a whisper. "We think so. We think you were treating yourself, and one of your alters became violent toward another. The psychiatrist identity was trying to integrate the patient identity, and the patient identity resisted. The teacher identity emerged as a neutral ground, a place where you could be neither doctor nor patient." I felt dizzy, leaned against the wall. How do I know you're real? How do I know this conversation is happening? You don't. That's the trap. Once you start questioning reality at this level, there's no solid ground to stand on. Every memory could be false. Every person could be a construct. That's what makes dissociative disorders so devastating. They erode the very foundation of identity and experience. I looked at the discharge summary I was still holding. The blank signature line seemed to pulse in my vision. What happens if I sign it? The cycle continues. You forget this conversation. You go back to being a teacher, at least during the day. You continue to function in a limited way. It's not ideal, but it's stable. And if I don't? We don't know. You might integrate, you might fragment further. You might develop new identities, or... She stopped. Or what? Or you might wake up, fully, to whatever the actual reality is beneath all these layers. I thought about my apartment, my lesson plans, my students. I could picture their faces so clearly. Jessica in the front row, always raising her hand. Marcus in the back, pretending not to care but secretly loving poetry. Were they real? Had I ever actually taught them? I thought about my medical training, the residency at Johns Hopkins, that I both remembered and didn't remember. I could recall specific lectures, specific patients, the feeling of my white coat, the weight of my stethoscope. But I could also recall never having gone to medical school, having studied literature instead, having chosen a completely different path. Both sets of memories felt equally real. "There's something else," Dr. Morrison said. "Something we haven't told you in previous cycles because we weren't sure how you'd react." "What?" "The discharge summaries you've been receiving, the ones that arrive in your mailbox, you're the one delivering them." "What do you mean?" "At night, when you're in your doctor identity, you write the summaries, print them, put them in envelopes, and deliver them to your own mailbox. Then during the day, when you're in your teacher identity, you find them and become distressed. You're creating the very evidence that drives you to come here and investigate." And I felt something crack inside my mind. Why would I do that? Because part of you wants to integrate. Part of you wants to resolve this. The doctor identity is trying to treat the patient identity, and the teacher identity is the medium through which they communicate. The discharge summaries are messages from yourself to yourself, trying to force a confrontation, trying to create a moment where all the identities have to acknowledge each other. This is insane. Yes. I looked at the signature line again. The pen in my hand, when had I picked up a pen, felt heavy. If I sign this, what exactly happens? You acknowledge the discharge instructions, you accept the diagnosis, you agree to the treatment plan, which includes continued observation and integration therapy. And in doing so, you complete the loop. The paperwork is filed, the case is closed, until the next cycle begins. And if I don't sign, the loop stays open, the tension remains. And in that tension, there's possibility. The possibility of change, of integration, of resolution, or the possibility of complete fragmentation. I thought about the woman in room 723 writing endlessly, trying to discharge everyone, trying to set everyone free. Was that me? Was I her? Were we both fragments of some original Sarah Chen who had existed before the trauma, before the split? How long have I been here? I asked. Really? Dr. Morrison hesitated. We're not certain. Your file shows 18 months, but there are gaps in the records. Periods where no one seems to have been treating you, or where the documentation is inconsistent. It's possible you've been here longer. It's possible you've been creating and destroying your own records, admitting and discharging yourself in cycles we haven't fully documented. So I could have been here for years. It's possible. I looked down the hallway toward the elevator. I could leave right now. Walk out of this hospital. Go back to my apartment. Go back to teaching. Except I'd never actually taught. Except my apartment was part of the hospital. Except none of it was real. Or all of it was real. Just not in the way I thought. The other patients on this ward, I said, are they real? Some of them are your alters. We're not always certain which is which. You're remarkably good at creating consistent, believable identities. Some of them have full backstories, families, careers. We've had staff members interact with your alters for weeks before realizing they weren't separate individuals. I felt sick. How many of me are there? We've documented 17 distinct identities, but there may be more. Some may be dormant. Some may only emerge under specific circumstances. 17 versions of me, all living in this hospital, all believing they were separate people. The teacher, the doctor, the patient, and 14 others I didn't even know about. What are their names? Dr. Morrison pulled out a tablet, scrolled through something. Sarah Chen obviously appears in multiple forms, but there's also Catherine Liu, the nurse on the 3rd floor, David Park, a maintenance worker, Jennifer Wu, a patient advocate, Marcus Thompson. Wait, Marcus Thompson? Like my student? You don't have students. But yes, one of your alters is named Marcus Thompson. He believes he's a patient here, admitted for depression following a divorce. He's been here for 3 months. The faces I'd imagined in my classroom, were they all me? All different versions of myself, playing different roles, creating an entire school full of people who didn't exist. This can't be real. It's real. It's just not what you thought it was. I sat down on the floor, my back against the wall. The discharge summary was still in my hand, the signature line still blank. What do you want me to do? I asked. I want you to make a choice. A real choice, not a compulsive one. Sign the paper if you genuinely want to continue the cycle, if you believe that's the best path forward, or don't sign it if you're ready to face whatever comes in. What do you think I should do? I think you should do what feels true, not what feels safe, not what feels comfortable, but what feels true. I looked at the signature line. The blank space seemed to expand, to become a void, a gap in reality itself. Signing it would close the loop, complete the circuit, make everything official. Not signing it would leave the wound open, the question unanswered. I thought about all the times I'd apparently done this before. 43 documented cycles. How many undocumented ones? How many times had I stood at this exact point, holding this exact paper, facing this exact choice? And then I realized something. You said I've always signed before, in all 43 cycles. Yes? So how do you know what happens if I don't? How do you know the loop resets when I sign? Dr. Morrison's expression changed. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or fear? We've observed the pattern, but you just said I've always signed. So you've never actually seen what happens when I don't. You're assuming the signing is what resets the loop. But what if it's the opposite? What if signing is what keeps me trapped? And not signing is what would set me free? She didn't answer. You're not real, are you? I said quietly. You're another one of my alters. The one who explains everything, who makes it all make sense, who gives me the illusion of choice, while ensuring I always make the same decision. That's not... What's your first name? Patricia, right? Patricia Morrison. Patricia Morrison. Except there's a patient in room 723 named Sarah Chen, and a nurse named Catherine Liu, and a maintenance worker named David Park. All Asian names, or names connected to my supposed real life. But Patricia Morrison? That's different. That's the... I stood up, walked closer to her. She backed away slightly. You're the alter who keeps me signing the discharge summaries, who keeps the loop going. Because as long as I'm cycling through these identities, as long as I'm questioning reality, I never have to face the actual truth. And what's the actual truth? Her voice was different now, less gentle, more defensive. I don't know, but I know it's not this. This is too neat, too explained. Real trauma doesn't come with a psychiatrist who lays everything out in perfect detail. Real dissociation doesn't have a helpful doctor who shows up exactly when needed to clarify the situation. I looked at the discharge summary again, really looked at it. The signature at the bottom, the one I'd thought was mine, wasn't quite right. The loops were too perfect, too consistent. My actual handwriting varied depending on my mood, my energy level, how quickly I was writing. But this signature was identical every time, like it had been printed rather than written. These aren't real discharge summaries, I said. They're props, part of the delusion, part of the trap. You're fragmenting, Dr. Morrison said, and now her voice had an edge of panic. You need to sign the paper. You need to complete the cycle. If I don't, what? I'll wake up? I'll remember what actually happened? You'll cease to exist. This identity, the teacher, will dissolve, and there won't be anything to replace it. Good. I tore the discharge summary in half. Morrison screamed, but the sound was wrong, distorted, like audio playing at the wrong speed. The hallway began to flicker, the fluorescent lights strobing. The walls seemed to breathe. I tore the paper again and again, until it was confetti in my hands. The hospital dissolved around me. I was in a small room, lying on a bed. The walls were padded. There was a window, but it was reinforced, unbreakable. A camera in the corner, red light blinking. I sat up slowly. My body felt wrong, like I hadn't moved in a long time. My muscles were weak, atrophied. On the wall across from me, someone had written, in what looked like marker. You can't discharge yourself from a diagnosis you keep writing. The door opened. A real nurse this time. I could tell because she looked tired, bored, human in a way Dr. Morrison never had. She was carrying a medication tray. "Good morning, Dr. Chen," she said. "How are we feeling today?" I opened my mouth to say I wasn't Dr. Chen, I was a teacher, but the words didn't come. Because I remembered now. Not everything, but enough. I was a psychiatrist. I had worked at this hospital. I had treated a patient with severe dissociative identity disorder. And at some point, the line between doctor and patient had blurred. I'd started to experience the symptoms I'd been treating. Or maybe I'd always had them, and becoming a psychiatrist had been an attempt to understand myself. "I'm not sure," I said honestly. The nurse smiled. "That's okay. Morrison will be by for your session later. She wanted me to give you this." She handed me a piece of paper. It was a discharge summary. Patient name, Sarah Chen. Attending physician, Sarah Chen. The signature line was blank. "She said you don't have to sign it if you don't want to," the nurse said. "She said it's your choice." After she left, I sat there holding the paper. I could sign it, complete the cycle, go back into the comfortable delusion of being a teacher, living a simple life, avoiding the complexity and pain of whatever the truth actually was. Or I could leave it blank, stay in this uncertainty, this not knowing, face the possibility that I might never fully understand what happened to me, who I really am, what's real and what's constructed. I thought about the woman in room 723, writing endlessly, trying to discharge everyone. Was she real? Was she me? Was she another layer of the delusion? I thought about my students, who might not exist, my apartment, which might be a supervised living facility, my entire life, which might be a story I told myself to avoid facing trauma. I picked up the pen the nurse had left. I looked at the signature line, and I thought, maybe the point isn't whether I sign or don't sign. Maybe the point is that I have to keep choosing, keep questioning, keep living in the tension between different versions of reality. Maybe that's what integration actually means, not resolving the contradictions, but learning to hold them all at once. I set the pen down without signing. The paper sat on my lap, incomplete, unresolved. Outside my window, I could see other buildings, other windows, other rooms, where other people were probably facing their own impossible choices. I didn't know if they were real. I didn't know if I was real, but I knew I wasn't going to sign that paper, not today. Tomorrow, maybe I'd wake up as a teacher again. Maybe I'd find another discharge summary in my mailbox. Maybe I'd start the cycle over. Or maybe I'd wake up as someone else entirely. Another alter, another identity, another version of Sarah Chen trying to understand what happened. Or maybe, and this was the thought that both terrified and comforted me, maybe I'd wake up as myself, whoever that was. The camera in the corner kept recording, its red light steady and unwavering. I wondered who was watching. I wondered if anyone was watching. I wondered if I was watching myself. The discharge summary lay on my lap, still unsigned, still incomplete,